Okay, everybody, we're ready to start now. Many apologies for the delay. Alicia, do you want to somebody count us down? We'll just give Keith time to take his seat. Welcome to this meeting of Mid-Suffolk District Council Cabinet. I'm Councillor Susie Morley, leader of Mid-Suffolk District Council, and I will be chairing this meeting today. I'll just remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers or hold separate conversations whilst others are speaking. If you're attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. And finally, we'll be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app, so please, members, make sure you're logged in and ready to use the app. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I'm now going to move to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
We have received no apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2 is to receive declarations of pecuniary, other registerable or non-registerable interest by members. Are there any to declare? Okay, thank you. Item 3 is MCA/22/20 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of September 2022. The minutes are attached as a supplement. Does anybody have any questions? No? Do I need a proposer and a seconder? Yes, please. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Flatman, and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Flatman. And a seconder? Councillor Haddingham, thank you. Go to electronic vote. And we'll move to the electronic vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in progress. That are 9 votes for, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Item 4 is to receive notifications of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received.
Thank you. Item 5, questions by councillors.
None received, Chair.
Item 6 is matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or the Joint Audit and Standards Committee. The Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Wellham, will provide a short overview of the scrutiny process which took place on last Friday, 30th of September, in relation to item 8, which is our Mid-Suffolk parking strategy. Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. I've also would like to report back on the council tax reduction scheme either now or later. In fact, we reviewed both on Friday. The Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee welcomes the parking strategy and has the following comments. Members expressed concern over the uncertainty in predicting parking capacity and expressed the need to update predictions of car use and car park use as the project moves into the implementation phase. There were queries over the governance of parking strategy implementation and a request that the business case for the implementation plan be made available for scrutiny at an appropriate time. Also, information bulletins at key stages of the implementation phase. The collected data shows that some 40 to 50% of journeys to a car park are 1.5 miles or less. The strategy needs to encourage implementation of proposals to discourage car use by providing opportunities for journeys to be undertaken by other means. This will involve working with partners, including the County Council and the Sustainable Travel Officer. Members asked why there was no data on problem areas and suggested producing a heat map showing reported instances of enforcement and issuing of penalty charge notices in hotspot areas. The emphasis needs to be on trip reduction, not increasing the number of car parking spaces. The strategy seems to accept that spend in town centres increases when on-street parking is permitted. Officers should be asked to review case studies conducted in towns where the reverse has been shown to be the case. Members expressed concern about the lack of flexibility in the strategy. Data was collected before the sharp increase in fuel prices and cost of living crisis. Transport to school often leads to on-street parking. A strategy for reducing the problems caused by parent parking needs to be developed, probably with the County Council. Members suggested that work is needed to investigate the often unsatisfactory parking of vehicles for car and van sharing. This is particularly along the A14 corridor. Members agreed that the strategy has a limited scope, as most car parking spaces are under the control of others, especially on-street parking. And members were not persuaded that the strategy could be used to influence planning policy. In respect of the council tax reduction scheme, the options before Cabinet today were reviewed and the committee recommends option 3. The committee considered that option 3 has the following advantages over the other options. It removes uncertainty for residents. It reduces officers' workload, especially in issuing revised tax bills. And with option 3, no resident loses out with a change from option 4, which is as is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wellham. I would just remind Cabinet that when we come on to discuss the parking strategy, that we are considering the strategy and not the implementation. So we just need to ignore the implementation suggestions. Moving on now to item 7, the forthcoming decisions list. Does anybody have any comments on the forthcoming decisions list? No? Thank you. Okay, item 8 is MCA/22/22. This is the Babergh and Mid Suffolk's parking strategy for the next 20 years. I'm going to invite the Cabinet Member for the Environment to introduce this report. Thank you, Councillor Fleming.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morley, and I welcome this opportunity to introduce Babergh and Mid Suffolk's parking strategy. The strategy has been developed in response to a clear need, recognised for some time, to address all forms of public and private parking within the districts. And the decision to go ahead and develop the strategy was made by Cabinet last summer. Work underpinning the strategy has been underway over the past year. We've engaged 2020 Consultancy to lead the data gathering and consultation process and develop potential proposals to address the issues. We've also used the most up-to-date DFT traffic forecasting model to predict growth-based need into the future. And this, of course, will need to be periodically adjusted to account for change, a matter that was raised at the ONS meeting last week. 2 sets of online surveys have been conducted in the districts, The first, initially, when the project started, generated over 1,000 responses, and a second was conducted earlier this year. This was a more targeted survey in response to some of the specific recommendations and proposals that had been developed. Also, a series of roadshows have been put on in towns and parishes across the districts. And having attended those in mid-Suffolk, I can say with confidence that these were extremely useful, and we gained very practical suggestions about public, commercial, and residential parking, and in particular, how to support our struggling town centres, shops, pubs, and businesses, which I think is so important at this time. This effort is an example of consultation well done and done effectively. It is a credit to everyone involved, and I do thank our officers and 2020 Consultancy for the hard work and dedication they've put into this. There is a wealth of information in the work which will be drawn upon as the plans develop as part of implementation. Some of the proposals are straightforward and inexpensive, others are more ambitious and costly, and these will be taken forward into an implementation plan to assess deliverability and proposed timeframes for making desired changes. Taking this forward will involve close working with stakeholders, towns and parishes, and probably most importantly, the County Council. I look forward to taking this important work forward to the next stages and hope you can all support it. I'll just note the recommendations that we are agreeing today. That the background evidence reports provided to note the background evidence reports provided to support the strategy, to approve the new parking strategy for Mid-Suffolk and its proposed recommendations, accepting that some recommendations may require full business cases for approval by Cabinet later. And 3.3, to agree delegated authority for the Director of Economic Growth and Climate Change in consultation with the portfolio holder for environment to deliver proposed recommendations through the creation of a focused implementation plan, subject to business case approvals, which will be required. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Gould?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Fleming, for a very comprehensive introduction to the report, the strategy. And I'd like to join her in commending this piece of work and the strategy, and particularly the consultation process that has gone alongside it, which I know certainly in my own ward has been enormously appreciated. I think one of the strengths of this piece of work is the fact that it is evidence-based, and this is the right way to go about things, to make your policies and your strategies on the basis of evidence. I think too often and elsewhere in the government business, we see the opposite. We see policy-based evidence-making. But here, this is a sound strategy based on evidence which has been carefully gathered, carefully analysed, and very clearly presented. And I know, just speaking for a moment about my own patch in I think that people in I have really appreciated having their experience of trying to park, as it were, validated by the data, by what the evidence says. Makes people feel that they're being understood and listened to. I'd just like to finish by reinforcing the point that the Chair, Councillor Morley, made, which I think is a very good one, because it's very easy to confuse strategy with implementation. And we are here looking at the strategy. There is provision within the recommendations for moving then into the preparation of business cases and implementation plans. And of course, this is where the real business happens, and I look forward to that stage. But to finish as I began by really commending this piece of work and the officers' work in conducting the consultations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. Do we have any questions from Cabinet? Do we have any questions from any other members present? Okay. Who wishes to start the debate? Okay. So the recommendations, I'll just repeat them before we go to the vote. To note the background evidence reports that have been provided to support the strategy, to approve the new parking strategy for Mid-Suffolk and its proposed recommendations, accepting that some recommendations may require 4 business cases to be approved by Cabinet at a later date, and to agree delegated authority for the Director of Economic Growth and Climate Change in consultation with the portfolio holder for environment to deliver proposed recommendations through the creation of a focused implementation plan which will be subject to any business case approvals required as part of the previous recommendation. So I'm going to now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in progress. That is 8 votes for, and that's unanimous. Sorry, Chair, that is 9 votes for. I do apologise. And it's still unanimous. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 9. This is MCA/22. 22? Sorry, let me just check that. Yes, exemption of the right to buy receipts for new council houses from pooling. If I can invite the Cabinet Member for Finance to introduce this report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased to give a brief introduction to report MCA 22/22 on the exemption from pooling of right to buy receipts for new council housing. Cabinet members, and indeed anyone else reading this report, will surely have noticed a statement in paragraph 2.1. This rather succinctly reads, "There are no other available options." And the reader may conclude this could rather limit debate on this report, and I have to concur. Whereas we previously had to pool right to buy receipts, which were then subject to restrictions and time constraints, the regulations now permit that on the right to buy sale of any new homes built since July 2008, the receipts can be retained with no conditions or time constraints. These receipts can be spent on any eligible HRA capital purpose, affordable housing, regeneration projects, or indeed repaying HRA debt. We can apply to the government for exemption from pooling, and the recommendation in paragraph 3.1 asks Cabinet to approve us doing that. So without any more ado, I'd like to move that recommendation and ask for a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Do we have a seconder?
Yes, I'm more than happy to second this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Haddingham. Do we have any questions from portfolio holders? Questions from any other members present? Does anybody wish to debate this item? Okay, so the recommendations are that application for exemption from pooling for all right to buy receipts from the sale of existing council homes built or acquired since July 2008 and homes built or acquired by the council going forwards is approved. If you could start the vote, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The vote's now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is 9 votes for, and that's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Item 10, MCA/22/23, Council Tax Reduction Working Age Scheme for 2023 to 24, consultation. So I'm going to invite the Cabinet Member for Finance to introduce this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For my second report today, I'd like to introduce the report MCA 22/23, which relates to a consultation on the Council Tax Reduction (Working Age) scheme for 2023-24. This report outlines proposed changes to this scheme and seeks approval from Cabinet to enter a period of formal consultation before seeking adoption of any revised scheme by Cabinet and full Council in early 2023. Members may recall that the first council tax reduction scheme applicable to those of working age came into effect from April 2013. It offered a maximum reduction in council tax to eligible households of 95%. In other words, a minimum payment of 5% of the council tax, which is a little over £6 per month on a Band A home, and perhaps £9.50 to £10 per month on a Band D home based on 10 instalment payments. Now, I must confess that in principle, I have previously supported the view that all bar the poorest pensioner should make some, albeit very modest, contribution towards our vital local public services, and indeed, I still do. However, as explained in detail in section 5 of the report, the operation of this current council tax reduction scheme is administratively very burdensome. What on the face of it may seem quite straightforward is actually greatly complicated by the need under universal credit to have monthly reviews as individual incomes fluctuate. Changing circumstances prompt a reassessment of the council tax reduction award, which consequently requires the production of a new council tax bill and payment profile. A new instalment plan defers payment, and then just before the new instalment falls due, universal credit may again recalculate and the process starts again. So this causes confusion. It involves officer time in making these recalculations. It involves printing costs and postage costs. I mentioned earlier the modest amounts of these charges after the 95% reduction, but these small balances are difficult to collect from those unwilling or indeed unable or unwilling to pay. The recovery processes themselves can lead to costs in excess of the modest amounts out for collection. So there is therefore a compelling logic to simplify this process and to eliminate these 5% charges and to move to 100% maximum reduction. Not only do the administrative costs outweigh the amounts we receive ourselves as a district council from the current scheme, but given the additional financial pressure everyone is experiencing during this current, hopefully temporary inflationary period, it makes this change timely to assist our most financially challenged residents. So as the report explains, to make changes to the council tax reduction scheme first requires a period of consultation. We must consult with other precepting authorities, council tax liable persons, those in receipt of the reduction, various debt and finance advisors and landlords. And the process and timetable are explained more fully in the report. I've tried to keep this introduction as simple as possible, but there are complications, and therefore a number of options have been considered, which are laid out in detail within the report. Our Section 151 officer is here and can assist me if members have more detailed questions. But prior to questions and debate, I'd like to move the recommendations in Section 3, asking for authority to consult on Option 3, which will simplify the council tax reduction scheme and move to a maximum 100% reduction. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Richardson?
Yes, Chair, happy to second the proposals.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from portfolio holders? Councillor Fleming?
Yes, thank you. Just have a couple of questions about this. First, are the changes going to be cost neutral to the council? And the second question is, will the proposals, when they are implemented, be reviewed in the future? Are they subject to review? I realise that the whole thing needs to go out to consultation. However, is the plan also to include a review of how the new scheme is working and within a particular time period?
Thank you, Councillor Fleming. In terms of, is it cost neutral?
Or would it be cost neutral?
Or will it be cost neutral to the council? From what I understand, looking at all the figures that I've seen, it should actually be marginally cost beneficial to us, the district council. So I say the costs of the administrative costs outweigh the amounts we receive ourselves as the district council, because as you'll know, I think we only basically retain about 8% of the total council tax that we collect. I doubt it will be cost neutral to the county council, and I don't know the situation, and I guess also not cost neutral to the police. But this of course is why we are consulting with them. So that's the answer to your first question. In terms of the second question, and I might need some assistance here from the Section 151 officer, but my understanding was this would be a temporary situation for 1 to 2 years, and in which case we would later have to revert to the 5% maximum, but perhaps you could just clarify that.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely spot on. And the only thing we would need to do, Councillor Fleming, would be to go out to consult again if we were to revert the scheme back to the 95%. So we would bring that back as a decision here to yourselves.
Okay, so is it clear that this is intended to be a short-term measure to be reviewed, or is it just sort of put out there to be reviewed if and when someone raises the question?
We can certainly make that clear in the consultation. I think Ipswich did something similar as well, so we can build that into the consultation that it'll only be a 1-year scheme, and we'll be going back out to consult the following year, so we can make that clear.
Thank you. I think I would like to see it made very clear in the consultation that the proposed changes will be for a set period of time, and they will be reviewed to see how they're performing, and or whether the way the whole thing is calculated could be further simplified, so that it's not as as burdensome on people's time. I feel there's still quite a bit of work to be done on this topic that we're not seeing today, in other words.
I would just remind you that this is a consultation for 1 year only. Does anybody else have any questions? Any other members have a question? No? Anybody wish to debate? Councillor Whitehead?
Perhaps I could just add, in terms of, I think perhaps where Councillor Fleming's coming from, this previous scheme's been in effect for 8 to 9 years, and it's taken some while to get people who'd never paid council tax before used to paying these modest figures. And I do have some concerns that if we go to a zero for a short period, to me it's a bit like the increase that was seen in the universal credit, where it was put up for £20 a week, which was quite a generous extra £1,000. But when that was taken back, politically, there was quite a lot of difficulty. So that's my only concern here. But I say that the logic is there, that it is a clumsy scheme and does need revising.
2023 to 24, and to authorise the Director for Corporate Resources, following consultation with a Cabinet Member for Finance, to initiate the formal consultation on the proposed revision to the Mid-Suffolk District Council (brackets working age) council tax reduction local scheme. So I'll ask Governance Officer to conduct the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in progress. That is 9 votes for, and that's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Just before I close this meeting, I would just like to say a few words. Emily Yule, this is her final cabinet with us as Mid-Suffolk and Babergh, and I just want to say thank you so much for all the work that you've put in. You've been here for as long as I've been a councillor, well, longer, obviously, since I've been a councillor, and your steady, patient, guiding hand is endemic throughout the council. So I would just like to say a really huge thank you for all the work and all the effort that you've put into keeping all of us on the straight and narrow, and to wish you all the best in your new council next week. So thank you so much, Emily. I really give you a round of applause. So thank you. The next meeting is scheduled for Monday, the 7th of November at 10:30. I look forward to seeing you all again in a month's time. Thank you all very much.